Hey, welcome back, everybody. Once again, it's Sweet 16 tournament time, and we're all set to go against the spread for the tournament and a whole lot more on this edition of Marc Lawrence Against the Spread today. With that, I want to welcome in our co-host and expert of panels, Jim Feist from Las Vegas, the legend himself. Jim, how's everything going for you?
Everything's going. It's too hot for March. It's way too hot. 97 degrees today. I need it cooling off.
Wow. Weather alert. There you go. So stay inside. That's all I can tell you, Jim. Stay inside. Whether it's home or the gym, stay inside, okay?
You got it.
Andy Iskoe, also from Las Vegas. Andy, how's the tournament treating you these days this year?
Well, Jim was right about the heat, but if we're going to cool off, let it be the weather, not the results of how the tournament's been going. We actually, I think we may have just set the longest consecutive number of days hitting a record high, and I think it's going to continue. I think the record is like 12, or we may end up at 12. I think the record was 7. I think we're now at 8. So otherwise, the tournament has been fine. It's unfolded the way I think a lot of people thought it would be, with minimal upsets in the first couple of rounds. Form held. I felt that Florida would be the first number 1 seed to be eliminated, but I did not expect it to be in the round of 32. And last year Arkansas was the only double-digit seed to make it to the Sweet 16, and this year Texas, fellow SEC member, holds up that as the only double-digit seed to make it to the Sweet 16. So form has held, and I think once you reach the Sweet 16, especially with the absence of so many higher-seeded teams, hard to really say, other than perhaps by the line or by the point spread or by the seeds, that there are going to be upsets. Because basically, if you've made it to the Sweet 16s, you've generally defeated at least one really good team in the round of 32. You may have had basically a bye in the opening round if you're one playing a 16, but at that point, unless you're playing one of the few double-digit seeds that won in round 1, you're generally playing one of the top, someone who's seeded 1 through 9 or 2 through 9.
Greg DePalma, Prime Sports, our co-host and our producer, I should say, on our show here today. Greg, how's the tournament going for you as well?
Yeah, Andy's right about that. Not a lot of big surprises. I don't believe. I think for the second straight year, no top 4 seeds lost in the first round. But we had a few upsets, which is nice. We almost had a monumental upset with Siena against Duke. That was definitely I think that was the biggest story, even though they didn't win. That was a close one. So Duke, even though they might even still be, I don't know, you have to look, every book might be different, whether or not they're still the odds-on favorite. But I don't know. They, even though they've gotten a little bit healthier, they just don't look right. Maybe they're bored. It's sort of like the TCU game. It's like as soon as TCU made that run and took the lead and they called timeout and they came back out, Duke just kicked their ass. It's almost like, is that the case? Is that what we're seeing? Is that they're just bored and they're waiting for the big games? Maybe that's the case. I guess we'll find out when they play a very tough St. John's team coming up, because that St. John's team, of course, is Andy's pick to win it all.
To answer your question, the current this is at the Westgate. Michigan at plus 300 is the favorite. Arizona is next at plus 350. Then we have Duke at plus 425, and Houston at plus 600. And I'm trying to well, that's it, because there's only 3 number 1 seeds remaining. Florida is gone, so they are no longer there. So Houston is the 4th favorite, and they're playing in the region with the number 2, Arizona plus 350. Michigan still favored.
Hey guys, I want to remind our viewers and our listeners out there to hit the subscribe button. Do us a big favor and do that if you will. Also, while you're there, hit the like button and ring the bell. You can visit us here at Proline TV channel and see our community page. Just simply click on the join button, if you will. You'll do us a big favor. With that, guys, let's get into the NCAA basketball tournament here. And you talked about Duke maybe not looking the same. And the biggest buy sign to me, the biggest indicator to me, occurred in their first tournament game when they struggled mightily against Siena. And we had pointed out how number 1 seeds who win that first game against a 16 seed, if they win by 6 or fewer points, they're tapioca. None of them have won the championship, and Duke is playing just like that. There's obviously something amiss with the Duke Blue Devils going on here, and it's reflected.
Well, because also it wasn't just that first game that they didn't look all that sharp for a good part of it.
No, it's not. But that was a sign that something is amiss here with this basketball team.
Could it be that the ACC was so soft this year, they had too many cupcakes? I mean, even though they did beat Michigan and they were impressive in that game, they have the ability, but too many soft games maybe makes you a little too soft.
It does. I mean, the tougher the schedule, you know the rule about strength of schedule, Jim, whether it's football or basketball, the tougher the schedule you play, the tougher you become. Yep. And you play the soft patsies and you end up becoming a patsy yourself because of it. Could well have happened to the ACC this basketball season. We're going to find out in the tournament here, but a lot of people hopping off that Duke bandwagon, as you mentioned here, I being one of them. But let's do this, guys. Let's talk about what's happened in the tournament here thus far. And I'm going to say with the Sweet 16 being here, I came across this stat, and it's absolutely incredible. And Andy, I'm going to give you the tip of the hat because you like St. John's to win this tournament here. And what St. John's has done in this tournament is absolutely phenomenal. They have trailed a total of only 38 seconds in the entire NCAA tournament. Trailed by only 38 seconds.
You know, I read that, and it said since their game against Connecticut, I thought you may have referring back to when they got blown out by Connecticut, which was 15, 16 games ago. But even if it's just in the first 2 games, that's pretty amazing. And actually, St. John's has also met one other. I won't say it's a criterion, but it is a factor that has occurred more often than we might think. So many NCAA champions usually face one significant scare on their way to the title. And the one that I always remember is the year UCLA won it, and Tyus Edney of Missouri, I believe, had that end-to-end run at the end of the game to score the winning basket, and that allowed UCLA to go on. And there have been other situations of teams that ultimately win the tournament that face a scare. Now, maybe we can say that about Duke, having faced a scare in their first 2 games. St. John's faced a scare in that game against the other day in Kansas. That win against Kansas, up 54-40, seemingly in control, and then it took a guy who hadn't made a shot all game to get the game winner. Who actually he called his shot because he told Pitino to call what I think called the power play or something, and that was called for him to get the ball, and he made the winning basket. So St. John's has also, much like Duke, but to a greater extent, because they were actually pressed at the buzzer to win the game. So St. John's has looked very good, and we'll get a good idea. I would not be surprised if the winner of this Duke St. John's game is in the finals and goes up against the winner of I guess it would be Arizona, but they won't be. I would say the winner between Duke and St. John's. They would go up against Houston, and I would think that they would beat Houston and then end up facing Arizona.
We got this post coming in here from Trend Tacklers, and we appreciate everything that he sends to us, and he always sends good stuff to talk about. That's the direction we're going to go here next, and he mentions the fact that for the 3rd straight year, that 12 of the Sweet 16 teams are teams that are top 4 seeds, meaning that the chalk is beginning to dominate in these NCAA tournaments. I didn't think so after the Thursday's first round games. It looked like we were going to have a chance to see some puppies, some dogs.
By the way, excuse me, Mark, the other part of his comment that's interesting is that's only happened twice between 2002 and 2023. So here we are 2 times in the last 3 years after not happening for 22 seasons. And that just shows, I think, as we've talked about many, many times, the influence of the NIL and the portal, which were not around basically for 2002 to 2023, maybe the last couple of years up to 2023. So I think that might be a signal of things to come in future years. And
it's the world in which we live, Andy. Like you mentioned, we have to deal with what we have to deal with, the NIL transfer portals, and it's making a mess of the NCAA tournament as far as looking for mid-majors and Cinderellas. I think they're going to be relics. We've seen it 2 years in a row now. It's been an awfully chalky.
The best moment of the tournament were those back-to-back long shots in that Santa Clara, Kentucky game that went to overtime.
No,
That's what, like,
that cost me a lot of money.
I didn't say it was the most profitable part. It was the most entertaining part. That brought back memories of what the tournament was like in the opening rounds throughout the 1980s and into the mid-1990s.
Greg and I had the solution to this whole problem yesterday. And we decided that we need to have a play-in. We take 28 teams. This is Greg's idea and my idea together. And we pick them to be in the NCAA tournament. Then we have a play-in tournament, which I suggest be the NIT. And the top 4 teams in that group then are invited into the NCAA Big Dance, making it 32 teams going to the NCAA. So then we give these teams a chance to not only win the NIT, but also a chance to come into the Big Dance and show what they have. That,
I like it, and I'm guessing that you're going to say
these guys will never, I mean, not never, but almost never get to the point where they reach the 16.
What I'm thinking there, what you mean then is, let's say, example, all those automatic qualifiers from the mid-majors and below don't get into the field. They go into that NIT tournament to play for one of those 4 spots, along with maybe like the last 8 or 10 of the at-large teams or whatever it needs to fill out the field.
Correct.
We also have another comment just came in here, guys. DBK points out the fact that the Big Ten has 6 teams in the Sweet 16, and he wonders, has any conference ever matched that before? And I don't have to go back real far on the memory. Didn't the SEC have 7 teams in the tournament last year in the Sweet 16, the SEC?
Really? Huh.
Yeah, I don't recall, but I'll check on that.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here now. I'm saying Auburn, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and one more. Who was that
Arkansas?
one more to make it? Who was that, Andy?
Arkansas?
What was Arkansas there last year?
Yes.
Okay, well then that's who it is, Arkansas. Yep.
They were the 10 seed. They were the highest seed last year, I believe, that made the field of 16.
By the way, in case, I know this is basketball, and I love it. The NBA playoffs are coming up. Baseball starts today. We're going to go the whole season. We're going to pick winners and make money for everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Major League Baseball, in its infinite wisdom, says, you know what? Let's start with an interleague series on the opening weekend and make one of those games in that series the game that kicks off the season. So let's take the defending champion Dodgers against the team oh no, wait a minute. We'll do the Yankees and the Giants. Why did we not have a rematch of that great 7-game series between the Dodgers and Toronto if they're going to open the season with an interleague matchup?
That's
kind of like the NFL. Kind of like the NFL opening with at least a defending.
I didn't want to switch the gears to baseball. I just wanted to mention it was starting.
Are they starting quickly, guys, before we get back to the tournament, I'm going to be really interested to see how this automatic strike.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. Wow.
It'll be interesting to see. You know, what's going to happen, bottom line is, if somebody appeals that ball and strike and they're correct, they were correct. Then the right call ends up having been made as opposed to an umpire's error in judgment per se. So I don't think there's going to be anything wrong with this unless it extends time for length into how long a baseball game takes, which they tried to shorten up a little bit earlier.
I don't know. Did they put in another rule that now when the umpire needs new balls, instead of baseball's put into play that instead of a bat boy bringing them out, it's going to be like a little robot?
Oh boy.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Brings out the baseball.
No, we don't need that either.
Sexy cheerleaders bringing them out.
There we go.
Better.
We can get ice to bring them out.
The thing that we all grew up on with these umpires was every umpire had a different way of calling balls and strikes. You had an umpire who liked to call the low strikes, and the other umpire the high strikes. And I was watching that one game that we're referencing in the World Classic and that controversy. And the pitch looked like normal to me. It's like, okay, it looked around the strike zone. It's an umpire. I mean, I've seen these guys call these strikes before. It meant nothing to me. And then they show the replay. Yeah, but this is the box, and it wasn't in the box. And it's like, I don't know. I think it's gonna take a while because these umpires they've been doing this themselves for their own personal strike zones for their entire lives.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have to conform to the actual, this is it. This is the strike zone. It's what everybody has to deal with. And I think you're going to see this happen a lot.
The players never complain about the umpire strike zone as long as it's consistent from the first pitch to the end pitch. So we know, this guy likes to call the high balls a strike if it's at the shoulder or something. As long as you're consistent, the players have no problem. That's going out the window now, exactly like you said.
There's two things in life that will never change: death and change. We got to get used to it.
I like that. Change will never change. Hey, guys, before we get into the tournament itself, let me recap real quick this Ken Pom Top 22 adjusted defensive efficiency teams that are left. There are 10 of them left in the field right now. The last 22 years, the teams on this list from the top 22, a team from it has always won the tournament.
Defensive efficiency, Mark?
Defensive efficiency.
Drum roll, please.
Yes. Okay, let's go.
Oh, wait, I have a drum roll. What am I talking about? Wait a second. Where's the drum roll? Let me get it. Boy, I have to get used to doing this. Here you go. You didn't hear that?
Well, it sounded like a cymbal to me, Greg.
I think we got to do better than that.
Yes, I think we do. But while Greg,
it costs money, so that's the free drum roll.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, that's the free one. Yeah.
All right, these are the 10 teams that are left from his top 22 teams that figure to win this tournament. They've done it 22 times in a row. Have never not done it. The number 10 team left is Tennessee.
Oh, forget them. Go ahead.
Number 9, Michigan State. Number 8, St. John's. Number 7, UConn. Number 6, Nebraska. Number 5, Houston. Number 4, Iowa State. And then the 3 big boys. Number 3, Arizona. Number 2, Duke. And number 1, Michigan. Those are the 10 teams that Ken Pom shows alive to win this tournament to cut down the nets. We'll see whether or not next week we talk when we go into the elite or into the Final Four round. I'm sure that list will be paired because it can only be 8 teams. So we'll find out exactly where that stands at that particular.
There's 3 teams that are not in there in your list?
Well, the teams that were in the top 22, the top 22, Illinois, Iowa, Purdue. Okay. But they didn't have, they weren't ranked in the top 22. That's the problem here. 3 other teams in this tournament are there, but they were not ranked in the top 22. Illinois.
No, but aren't there 3 other teams that are still in the Sweet 16, like Arkansas? That is not in. It should also be in that. Not ranked in the top 22.
No, if I didn't mention them, they weren't in the top 22. Arkansas is not. No, and I can sure it's about the defensive efficiency portion part of that whole thing, that equation.
But yeah. See, it sounds that, but Illinois, Iowa, and Purdue are just like Arkansas, right? They're not in the top 22.
No,
2 other teams that we don't have it.
When I said Illinois 28, Iowa 30, and Purdue 35, they were close, no cigar. But I don't even think Arkansas was close. Okay.
No, they weren't. Yeah.
So and Alabama's the other team.
Right. So there are 3 sniffing around who if they won, it wouldn't count anyway, being Iowa, Illinois, and Purdue. But we'll see whether these teams from this top 10 list. I got a feeling Tom's going to make it 23 for 23 this particular basketball season here. Any thoughts I'm going to run by you here? First of all, Greg, of what we've seen so far in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA basketball tournament, what has caught you by surprise?
Surprise. Not a lot. I guess surprise. Look, I guess the biggest surprise would have to be the Iowa-Nebraska matchup. Most everybody thought we'd have Florida and Vandy, the 2 SEC teams, but the 2 Big Ten teams beat them. And I think that should clarify things that we kind of knew before the tournament began, that the Big Ten was better than the SEC. So that's definite at this point. So that's the biggest one, is that one of those 2 teams is a game away from the Final Four. And but again, since the Big Ten now has 6 teams left, which is the most, and maybe the other surprising thing would just be Duke, and just the fact that they've played as bad as you can play and still advance for a top team like Duke. But again, like I said, I don't know. Maybe they're just bored. It could be. They can come out against St. John's and kick their ass, and we'll be like, oh, there you go. That's what we're expecting. Or St. John's beats them, and it's like, well, all the signs were there. So I don't think to really answer your question, Mark, I don't really think there were a whole lot of surprises.
Nothing caught you by surprise.
No, not really.
Okay. Jim, anything to you? Anything caught you by surprise so far from what we've seen?
Yes and no. We talked about it, and I thought pretty much all year that the nil in the portal would make a huge difference like it did last year. And I don't think everybody really believed that it would, to the degree that it has. I mean, we had one day, I think in the round of 32 or 16 straight favorites, all won straight up. I think that was day 2 or day 3 or something like that. But
I think it was Saturday. Yeah.
It's been remarkable, but even more than I ever dreamed it would be, because I mean, these guys they're getting you got teams with $20 million in cash to pay players, and get another team with 800,000. You know that the guy that's offering 50,000, the guy's offering $1 million. You know who the better player is going to, and it's a money game now, and college basketball needs to adjust, and we need to adjust with it. Like I said, everything's changed, and we have to adjust with it. I hope the NCAA does something about it, because if they do exactly what they did this year and last year to next year, we're going to end up again, maybe even worse, with all top teams moving forward, and the little guys have no chance of actually picking up a trophy, which I don't think is good, because I think every sport that you play, you play it to win. I think every young man and young woman gets into something, they hope one day that they can be the champ. Well, in this format, they will never be, because you're playing in millionaires against boys and girls, and it's not going to work.
So you're basically saying that these mid-majors are all about ready to accept participation trophies rather than the big trophy, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I happen to agree with that. That's sad but true. Andy, what's caught you by surprise so far these first 2 rounds of the tournament?
Andy stepped away.
I think he went away. Yeah.
Oh, yep. Okay. All right. Well, let me pick it up.
What surprised you, Mark?
About me. Okay. Thank you for asking, Greg.
You got it.
Yeah, you are part of the show.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to say this. You're going to say, well, that's not surprising, but I'm going to say how well Houston has played in this tournament here. And we saw it coming. They showed signs just before their tournament that they were maybe not as good as they were supposed to be, but they entered this tournament and they've really turned the Jets on, especially defensively. And I have in the Sweet 16 guide, we have a smart box column in there called the 125-point hammer. And what that is about Sweet 16 defensive clamps. And there are teams in the Sweet 16. I'm going to share this with you since the 2002 season here. If you get teams into the Sweet 16 round that have allowed 125 or fewer points in their first 2 games, these teams have gone in the NCAA tournament in these first 2 rounds, 109-51, 96-64. Now, we've got the Houston Cougars at the top of the heap in that list here, this particular tournament. Coming into the Sweet 16 round, they've only allowed 104 total points. That's 52 points a game by this staunch defense by this basketball team. I'm going to tell you here, there's 6 teams that you have to be aware of because when you pare this thing down and you want to get to this top 6 teams, this is where the teams that make the money in the tournament are. They're 60% overall, the top 6 teams. The top 6 teams on the list this year happen to be Houston, St. John's, Nebraska, Duke, Arizona, and Illinois. But my contention being that Houston has really, really turned the Jets on now. They're going into Houston and playing this week. They're going to be having to practice at home. They can leave their bed from home. I think it's going to be a big, big boost for this basketball team, and I will be stunned if Houston is not playing in the Final Four next week.
You said six. You said six. I think I missed one. Would you repeat them?
The 6 teams?
Yeah.
We've got on the 25-point contingency: Houston, St. John's, Nebraska, Duke, Arizona, and Illinois.
Oh, I missed the Arizona one. Okay.
Yeah, they've all surrendered a buck and a quarter or less in total points heading in.
What I was gonna mention, Mark, is that in that Houston Illinois matchup, the thing that also will favor Houston, assuming if Houston wins, then all the people with Illinois tickets, tournament tickets with Illinois, and the loser of the Iowa-Nebraska game will be looking to sell their tickets. And who's going to be around there? All the fans in Houston who couldn't get tickets before the tournament started. That'll buy up all those, and that crowd will be hugely Houston in the final game against either Iowa or Nebraska.
In the Elite Eight round, yes.
Well, if it's Nebraska, nobody's going to feel sorry for them.
Point this out now, Mark. You just point up something here that might give us a real big play, and I'm going to bet it right now, actually. Houston, Illinois, with that efficiency on defense.
I know where you're going,
Under.
Jim, and that's where I was going to go. Continue.
Let's go under.
Well, and you can also say the same thing about St. John's and Duke.
Yep.
Well, I've already played that one.
Okay. So you got
you're right. You're
two
right.
matchups pairing teams from the 125-point clamp, if you will, defensive clamp, that are hooking up with one another.
Right.
That'll leave you just Nebraska, Arizona, alone by themselves on an island. But hey, if you want to follow this rule, you'll be backing those teams separately by themselves. Interesting point there. Andy, what has caught you by surprise most of all this first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament?
Well, I think Greg touched upon it in his comments. Florida losing prior to getting to the Sweet 16. Like I said earlier, and I think last week, I felt Florida was most vulnerable because I think the numbers that they put up this year were not nearly as good as the numbers that they had last year when they won it all. But I did not expect them to lose in the second round. I had Iowa, one of the weaker teams in the at-large pool, as what was it? I think they were the number 9 seed when they got in 8 or 9. I think it was number 9. But that was really the biggest surprise. And again, I think one of the other big surprises was that I thought the committee did a bad job because it gives us matchups in the Sweet 16 that would have made more sense if we had them in the Elite 8. Now, one of them that I thought we would have had, might have been like a St. John's would be more, a Duke would be more of an Elite 8. Michigan State, Connecticut would be more. Illinois, Houston certainly would be more of an Elite 8 matchup. So I think that we could have had, the Elite 8 matchups will be nice, but I think we may end up seeing even more competitive games in this round than we will in the round of 8, simply because so many of these games, first of all, we have so many low lines. And for example, let's say Tennessee makes it into the finals against, let's say Michigan. That'll probably be a much larger line than in the game between, say, an Illinois and a Houston that we're going to see this week. So I thought that the surprising thing was the way that the seeds were set to not give us the kind of matchup. I mean, really, when you take a look at it, the best matchup, and it turned out to be that, even though it didn't look like it was going to be, the St. John's Kansas game. 2 very rarely really good programs matching up in the second round. And you usually don't have those kind of matchups because I thought that I think that the seeding was very heavy towards, say, the top 5 or 6 seeds. So you did have to make some distinctions there. But I felt that there were a number of teams that in those top, say, 4, 5, and 6 seeds that could have been seeded a little differently.
Well, guys, we have a Nebraska Cornhusker fan tuning into the show here, Chris P., and he's calling out the Nebraska Cornhuskers for what they've done so far this season. And, if you throw history out the window and look at their play on the court this season here, what they've done, the boxes they've checked, they do deserve to be right here. In fact, they're one of the top 4 teams that have surrendered the fewest amount of points. The question I want to ask
ask Greg this. I was going to ask Greg very quickly about Nebraska. Fred Hoiberg, Coach of the Year.
I think he has to be in the running for sure. I mean, if for no other reason, what we mentioned, never won a tournament game. First of all, got his team to the tournament. never won a tournament game. And here he is in the Sweet 16 round. And I think he's going to advance personally into the Elite 8 round. One interesting thing about Hoiberg, 3 times he's been in this tournament and laid single digits. He's won and covered all 3 times. He's an excellent basketball head coach.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going to outcoach.
Iowa beats Florida, which is one of the number ones.
Yes.
How big of a letdown does a team that does that have in the next game?
That's a real good question, Jim. And when they beat them, the first thing I did was opened up the well-oiled machine and looked at how teams do in this tournament after they pull the rug out on a number 1 seed. I was salivating. I was looking for some juicy numbers, and I found nothing. Nothing.
No.
There doesn't seem to be.
Well, let me ask you if you did it this way, because there's a big difference. Let's say that Florida pulled that out upset on a Friday and then had less than 48 hours to turn around and play, as opposed to pulling the upset on Sunday, where now they had.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the letdown would be much more significant if they had to play, less than 48 hours later than if they had 3-4 days to prepare.
I think if there's an opening, Andy, you might have hit it right there. Just the amount of time between that upset. Was it a mini small window or was it a gaping window? So that'll be determined here. I just personally feel that the upset taking Florida out as Iowa did here. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not a week off between that, not a week, but the largest amount of days, is going to affect this basketball team here this week or not.
Mark, the other thing is letdown from Nebraska after having never won a game in the history of the program, now making it into the Sweet 16 after getting that first run, and especially being taxed a little bit after that first win to get past Vandy. They could be in a similar letdown situation, but for a different reason, because that was significant for the history of the program, as opposed to knocking off a number 1 seed by Iowa. I think I don't know that I would equate one of them more significant than the other, but I think that they're both significant concerns.
If I'm riding on that Nebraska train this particular tournament here, and I've arrived at the Sweet 16 round, I would say to you, Andy, I don't want to hear anything about what the teams in the past didn't do. This team is doing it. And I'm enjoying the ride. I don't think a player or a coach on this team, did they use that for impetus or for fuel to win this tournament and keep driving further? I think the reason they're winning is because they're a staunch defensive basketball team by a really, really good head coach. So
it did start 20-0.
Yes,
So
20
early.
That's another great point, Andy. A lot of people don't even realize that about Nebraska. The brilliant start that they got off to, 20-0. I think you can ask anybody in the that'll be in the field or in the crowd in Houston this weekend watching that game. What was Nebraska's record their first 20 games this season? I don't think anybody would tell you 20-0. I really don't.
Probably not. Yeah,
No.
You're right.
Maybe
Hey,
not
guys,
even Husker fans who didn't start following them until they were 20-0.
On the flip side of talking about these teams playing really, really staunch defense, we've got 4 teams that have allowed the most points, meaning they've been defensively soft this tournament so far, that being Arkansas, Michigan, Purdue, and Texas. Do you see there being a trend in those 4 teams? The one that I see is Michigan being on that list because Michigan is really a good defensive basketball team.
Yeah.
And so far they've had a leak in their scoring defense here so far. Does that tighten up? That's the question I have to ask you.
I would say this, because I did a little research also. Obviously, Texas, you're only talking about the round of 64 and 32 because they also played that extra game in the in the first 4. I did a little research because there were a number of teams. The other 2 teams, Purdue allowed 140 and Texas 139, and I think there were 3 or 4 other teams that allowed between 134 and 140. A very close group. However, you've now got from 140, you go to the 152 that Michigan allowed. So it's a gap of 12 in which nobody fell in, and then you go from 152 to the 166 that Arkansas allowed. Now, I'm not concerned about Arkansas because that's their style of play. I think, let me see if I've got the numbers here on the regular season. They averaged 90 points a game and allowed an average of 80. They allowed, 78 and 88, I think, in their games. Michigan, on the other hand, is a bit more of a concern. They, on the year, allowed an average of 69 points per game. So they were considerably different, or at least significantly, it's not significantly, but much more different than Arkansas was. And I think that, in other words, Arkansas allowed what you might have expected them to allow based upon their style of play. Michigan allowed more than you would have expected them to allow because of their outstanding defense and rebounding.
So does it come back to the norm this weekend for Michigan? That's my question.
It should, based upon where is it here? No, they're playing Alabama. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, so they've allowed an average of 76 points a game. If they allow 76 points to Alabama, they probably cover the spread.
Alabama is another team that was a leaky defense that's played some pretty decent defense in this tournament. Just 135 points they've allowed. So does Alabama's defense figure to bust in a game like this? Or does Michigan's figure to improve?
Alabama doesn't have a defense.
They don't? There's
no.
Well, they don't.
If the opposing team doesn't score,
they don't want to waste energy playing defense. They just want to shoot.
They want to fill the hole, huh?
Yeah, if the opposing team doesn't score, it's because they can't shoot straight. We talked about this yesterday. If you take a look at this, let's consider. Even though Michigan,
by the way, just one thing, Greg. Of the 68 teams in the field, Alabama was number 68 in average points allowed.
Oh, that's just shocking.
It makes sense, but you would think that they might still have been better than a team like Howard or something. But
yeah,
no.
Because let's keep in mind that even though Michigan gave up whatever points you said, they've scored 196 points in the tournament.
Yeah.
So they won both games by over 20. So what you're saying is, well, they needed to win by 30 or 40 to kind of be the way they were. They just don't need to. So they're, and I don't think it's that. I kind of don't even worry too much about 2 games in tournaments anyway, especially since especially you got to look at the stats too of the first game, which I'll do. Like if I see an outlier and I say, wait a second, so-and-so player all of a sudden has come from nowhere and he's averaging now in the tournament 10 points more than he was during the regular season. Well, you got to check first of all in that first game when they were playing, a pretty weak opponent, how many points did they score? And if it was on average of the second game of the first game, then you're okay. But no, they scored 18 against Howard, and he only scored 4. When they played a good team, then you got to keep that in mind. So sometimes two game stats can be a little misleading, but it is valuable because we talked about Purdue, how hot they are, Michigan's red hot, Michigan State's red hot. So
Arizona.
there are teams. Yeah,
Iowa
so there are teams out there that are really shooting a lot better percentages, 3-point and free throw shooting more than they have during the regular season, or vice versa, worse.
Well, Purdue is hitting 58% of their threes. Now, are we going to see regression? I mean, that's an incredible stat.
Yes, it is. It's a big stat, and it's one of the main components that teams take usually into the Final Four weekend because they've been really sizzling at the 3-point line.
And they may not regress too much against Texas.
Well, does Texas defend the 3 really well? That's another point. We have to look at that.
Not especially 35%.
Here's something that I always look at, and I've done this since I was back in, whenever, 10,000 years ago. The guard play. Guard play, I feel, is extremely important in major games because if you have a guard or 2, if you're fortunate enough to have that many, that is exceptional. They can take over a game. And no matter what you do, you give them the ball and they're going to open it up. They're going to find a way either to hit the shot or go to the bucket, get fouled, hit the free throws. There's some guards in this 16 that are pretty damn good. And Acuff, is it? What's
Acuff.
Acuff.
Yeah,
he is amazing. That guy is amazing. And can you stop him when you're down inside 2 minutes and you need to do something? Get to the rim, get a shot off, make a point. How do you stop that kid? I mean,
that's one of the interesting aspects of the game against Arizona and their inside game.
Right. Are there guards in this Sweet 16 that you feel are basically unstoppable and within that 2 minutes when everything has to come upright for you?
Well, I think that's been Arizona's strength this year has been their guard play. And they're young, they're really young. So the question is, does the talent of from their backcourt prevail over the youth and inexperience of a basketball team? It hasn't so far this basketball season. I think we're going to find out whether it does or not moving forward here. Your thoughts on that, Greg, about the young team, the young guards that dot the roster at Arizona?
Yeah, A-Cup's the best, no question. If Arizona, if they want to win that game or feel good about winning that game, they better have a comfortable lead going into those final 2 minutes. Like you said, Jim, you don't want to leave that game up to that their best against our best, because A-Cup, there's nobody better than maybe A-Cup in the entire tournament. And then we're seeing UConn, and we don't know if this is just, the first couple of opponents, but, this Taris Reed kid has just been amazing. 41 points and 40 rebounds in the first 2 games combined. And now he's a big man, so he's not a guard, obviously. And then if you want to just take a look at point guards, like we talked about Fears from Michigan State, he's already got 27 assists in 2 games in the tournament already. So that's the thing, is that this is why, even though Arizona has good players, Burries is a good player, Bradley, Pete, they're good players. The Burries and Bradley are both, Burries is a 5-star freshman, so he's one of the top impact freshmen in the country coming in. So and he's proven himself, but do you feel more comfortable if it's Burries against A-Cup? Who do you kind of feel has the edge? And I think it's A-Cup. So, but then again, Arizona's got a much better team, and that's why they're heavily
supporting talent.
Yeah.
Who has the better guards, Greg? Is it Arizona or is it Houston? Houston's guards is really a main strength of their basketball team.
Houston, the only thing with Houston that I'd be concerned with is that there's no more LJ Cryer. And he was their man last year in the tournament. They do not have a man like that in this tournament, and they're kind of relying on the 5-star freshman Flemings. That's what they're relying on to give him instant firepower. Otherwise, Emmanuel Sharp is a really solid player. He was part of the team last year. 3 starters are back from the team last year, but they don't have LJ Cryer. And that's what I think might hurt them once they start getting a little bit further, and maybe even in their first matchup with Illinois. Now they start playing teams that have offensive firepower. We'll find out because I know Houston's defense has been really strong, but Illinois has got a lot of offense and they got a lot of weapons, and it's not like playing Texas A&M or Idaho.
Well, guys, let's wrap up this section, this segment, I should say, with the coaching, okay, which goes a long, long way, obviously, in this tournament here. And the first thing I'm going to call out from the Playbook Sweet 16 tournament guide is Rick Pitino's phenomenal success in the Sweet 16 round. He's 12-1 straight up in his career, 11-2 to the spread, just annihilates basketball teams.
One question there. How many times has that been in the role of an underdog?
Well, the first time he did it, Andy, was his first year. I believe it was at Providence. Yeah. And I believe he was like an 11 seed, and he took out a 6 seed. So he obviously had to be the underdog in that, and he drilled them. Okay. Came out of nowhere to do something just like that. I can look in here in the Sweet 16 to see exactly what he does.
I'm just saying, because of all other than the Providence program has been at elite programs. Yes. Which usually or generally, you probably have your database with coaches in there. I don't have that in mind, but I would have to say, Louisville, Kentucky, etc., that he would probably been a top 4 seed in many of those tournament Sweet 16 appearances.
We've also got 2 other coaches in this round here that never lost a Sweet 16 game. Duke's John Shire and Danny Hurley from UConn, both 2-0 in the Sweet 16 round. Danny Hurley using that to obviously take his team to cut down the nets in the tournaments. John Shire, that's my question to you guys. I know he's been here twice. He's won twice. He's got this Duke basketball team. Would you call him relatively inexperienced, or having been there and won 2 Sweet 16 games? Do you think that matters, Jim, for this Duke basketball team, John Shire?
Well, I think everything matters, but usually in his position with that team, they have much better quality players. I think he's up against it here. This is a very difficult matchup because of the enormously difficult defense they're going up against, and they haven't played that well. Now, I think this is going to be a very close game down to the wire, maybe down to the last shot. When you're talking about the UConn game, that's a tough one because you got two quality coaches, you got two quality teams. I think UConn has a higher ceiling, but they've been so inconsistent at times. You never know what you're going to get. I mean, it's like they go from the outhouse to the penthouse and back. I don't know what you get from this team every week they come out there. It's hard to say. It's hard to say that. Look at a team that could get blown up by 20 or win by 20. It's one of those. But they are well coached and they have a lot of experience at this level. It's amazing how that school does so well in tournaments, men and women.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. One last note on Rick Pitino in passing, guys, before we move on here. Not only is his record as good as it is, but he's even better against better basketball teams in his career in the Sweet 16 round. 7 times he's taken on opponents that have an 800 or better win percentage. He's won and covered all 7 of those basketball games.
Well, that answers your question, Eddie.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's amazing.
The original question that Mark asked was with coaching. I think a lot of people may give Pitino more of a coaching edge than actually exists because of the success in his short time that are coming after Coach K and learning under Coach K. Then most people would say, "Oh, well, John Shire's just doing it a few years. Pitino's been there for basically 40 years." So there's nothing not to like about Shire as far as going up against Pitino. So yeah, I give Pitino the edge, but not as great an edge as a lot of people might normally give him because of the quote-unquote relative inexperience of Shire, but that relative inexperience has been extremely successful.
Well, then, guys, of the 3 number 1 seeds that are left, Florida watching the tournament with us now, which one do you feel is most vulnerable of the 3 number 1 seeds that remain here? Arizona, Duke, or Michigan? I'm going to run that by you, Greg. Tell me which one you think is most vulnerable.
Duke.
Well,
that's because their opponent, and both because their opponent and the way they're playing.
Jim, would you agree?
And by the way, and their opponent, potential opponent in the regional final, Michigan State and Connecticut.
Yep. Well, they're priced that way right now with the tournament odds.
I'd say Duke is most vulnerable and Arizona second.
So you like Michigan the best of the 3 then, Jim? Is what you're saying?
Michigan is not vulnerable.
Yeah, I don't feel Michigan is vulnerable.
That'll be what did I say yesterday? I'm going to say a 20-point win.
We talked about Michigan giving up a lot of points, but we have to look at sometimes is margin of victory. They have dominated, and like plus minus kind of thing. They've been pretty damn good. They've been pretty damn good all year. But I think Duke is number 1 vulnerable. Number 2 would be Arizona.
Well, as far as margin of victory goes, Jim, that's the next question I was going to ask everybody. That's a big factor when it comes to handicapping games is, how well do teams win their games by what scoring margins? And the best team that's left in this tournament here is the Duke Blue Devils. They win their games 18.8 points per game on an average margin.
You're talking about average margin over the regular season, not in the tournament.
Yes, coming into this game, every game they played this year, right?
How about just the tournament?
Well, you can have a small sample of just 2 games to look at.
It's not going to affect the season-long averages much at all.
No, I think the season-long is a little bit better of an indicator here. The 2 guys that are right on their heels on Duke's heels is both Arizona and Michigan at 17.7. So how ironic is it the 3 number 1 seeds are the top 3 teams in college basketball in scoring margin per game? Here's the question.
I agree with that. I'd like to combine it, though, with strength of schedule.
Yes. Well, you can do that.
Because the highest scoring team with margin was High Point, 19.7. Now which is interesting because they knocked off Wisconsin and nearly knocked off Arkansas.
Well, let me bring up the Ken Palm strength of schedule because we can maybe tie that all in.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great segue, Jim. Let's see exactly which of those 3 teams ranks best in strength of schedule in the Ken Palm rankings here. we're going to stack them up here. Number 1 team was Kansas, by the way. Number 2 was Alabama. Number 3, Kentucky. They're playing obviously in some deep company there.
Well, let me ask you this before you continue, Mark, because there's 2 components there. There's the non-conference component, okay, that strengthens you for conference play, and then the overall component, which includes both conference and non-conference. And then the dilemma there is how much emphasis do you place on the non-conference component, because the non-conference component, with the limited exceptions, hasn't occurred in 3.5 or 2.5 months.
I would say this, Andy, because it's a Ken Palm stat that I'm reading, and he's only got a column about this wide. He can only put the net result in there. I don't think he really determined it. So he's looking obviously at all games.
It's the far right column on that page that Greg doesn't have it. Well, he can't show it there, but that's the non-conference strength of schedule at the very, very end.
Okay, well, non-conference strength of schedule. Wow.
Oh, okay. I see it.
Yeah. I look at Alabama's non-conference.
Alabama's the best left in the tournament here right now.
Look also Michigan.
Yeah, Alabama, Michigan, and then Duke. But overall net strength of schedule here, the teams in this tournament that are left, Michigan is the best. They rank number 4 overall, Purdue number 8 overall, Tennessee 14, Texas 31, Arizona 2, Michigan State 8, Duke comes into this tournament here really rather weak, number 22 in the country. And Houston
again,
really
that's also part of the ACC being down this year.
Yes, it is. It's the neighborhood in which you live. You're going
to play roughly 20 conference games, 18 to 20 conference games.
Right.
And you got Texas with a minus at 31, minus 6.50. That's awful. That's
Texas.
Awful. Yeah.
Yeah, minus 6.5. They indicating a very weak non-conference schedule. Compared to their overall
maybe schedule. The team we're not talking about enough, and because they have been playing very well, and they were ranked number 1 before the season, is Purdue.
That's exactly right.
Maybe we're not focused enough on them.
Yeah, that's the sleeping monster I feel is in the Sweet 16 here round right now. And
I kind of missed that myself. Yeah.
By the way, were any of you surprised that Duke line against St. John's opened 6.5 and was bet up to 7?
Well,
considering all the attributes defensively,
St. John's played against Kansas. They look pretty bad, even though they won and looked at. Sometimes in the first half, they looked like they were a high school team.
Well, John's is not getting a lot of
St.
credit.
John's has trailed for only 38 seconds. Yeah. But I'm saying I would have thought the line for St. John's and Duke, I think I heard a couple of bookmakers interviewed before the weekend said they'd probably make it 3.5 or 4.
I agree with you, Andy. I think that line is too big.
Yeah, I do too. Especially, I think the closer we get to game day, I think this.
Greg, what's the condition of Foster for Duke?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't bet on him playing at all until maybe the Final Four, if that. So at least they got their one big guy back, which is definitely important. And they had a bunch of role players step up. I mean, Cameron's twin brother broke out in this tournament. So they're getting contributions from other players. And that's good. There's a lot to like. And I kind of understand the line, because if Duke just goes out and just decides, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to play our A game, Duke will win this game by double digits.
From the start.
Yeah, Duke will win. Exactly. Duke will win the game.
Duke's played their A game in the last 8 minutes of the second half.
That's been a problem.
Here. I got to admit to a mistake. When I first saw the line on the Purdue-Texas game, I thought the dog looked very live. When I'm starting to see these stats on what Purdue's doing and Texas' overall record, I'm not too sure I was right. I think maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, I call Purdue the bat out of hell team right now, Jim.
The problem with Purdue is that they often, especially in conference play down to the level of their competition, struggling against teams like Northwestern, and I forget the other. I think Minnesota may have been one of them. But when they've gone up against the better teams, and look, we saw what they did against Michigan and in the Big Ten championship game. Texas played. I think their overall schedule The non-conference schedule we saw was very weak, but I think when you take into play the conference schedule in the SEC, they were a decent team. I thought this line made sense, but I'm finding it hard to find which side I want to play in this one.
All right, guys, before we put the wraps on the show here, I'm going to ask everybody their two teams that they'll see playing for the national championship for the last question on the show. But before I get there, I want to ask you guys this, that the number one seed in the NCAA basketball tournament since they began seeding teams in 1985 is 26-14 overall, meaning of the 40 times they've played, they've cut down the nets 26 times. That leads by far of anybody else, obviously.
And by the way, a number of times those were against other number one seeds.
Yeah, they could have been, yes, right. But, then you're guaranteeing a number one seed's going to win, yeah. Right. But 9-3 the last 12. I'm going to ask you guys, will a number one seed win this tournament? Greg, a number one seed to win, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, not even a yes, an absolutely. I like that. I like the absolutelys. Jim, number one seed, yes or no?
Okay, the number one seeds are Duke, Michigan, and
Arizona.
The only one that would win it would be Michigan. The other two we're not going to make it.
So you think that they're prone to being taken down, the other two teams?
I think only Michigan of the number ones will win. Other than that, I'm looking at Houston and Purdue.
Gotcha. Andy, number one seed. Yes or no?
And Mark, the one thing about Purdue, even though they were ranked high in the beginning of the year, they're not in any of your top six, and they're not in your defensive efficiency. But damn, they look awfully dangerous right now.
Well, you think about that, Jim, just the logic behind the question you just asked, okay? They got out to that horrific tortoise-like start, okay?
Yeah.
And now they've making amends, okay? Now they, if you got to go back and revamp that, and you looked at this, well, how have the teams over the last half of the season, how do they rank in the total team efficiency? Right. They might well be there, okay?
Their guard, that one guard that they have that sets he's exceptionally good.
Braden Smith.
Yes. He's been playing lights out.
Yeah, you see, the thing about Purdue is, and the reason why I don't really worry about what happened in the regular season is because they didn't care. This is all about the tournament.
They didn't care?
Yeah, compared to the way they care now. They just didn't. It was just, let's just get to the tournament. That's what we're playing for. As soon as the Big Ten tournament began, they started playing their best basketball. They beat Michigan, who they lost to pretty easily just a couple of weeks earlier on their home court because it didn't mean as much. Now it means something. They've stepped it up. These guys have been in the tournament the last several years. They've been to a championship game. They lost a heartbreaker to Houston in the Sweet 16 last year. It's all about a championship. That's what it's about. Yes, they've played weak against weak teams, but that's because they didn't have any care. Now they do. They're not going to look at Texas and go, well, it's just Texas. No, they're going to look at Texas like Texas is in our way to win a national championship, and we're going to kick their ass. Now, whether they do or not, I have no idea, but I expect they'll cover. That's my play. But this should not be a surprise. This team is on a mission. They need to win a championship with this group. It's over. They got a couple of guys who are gone, including Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. I mean, these are like two major pieces that will not be there next year. And then they're going to be back to being just another team, depending on what they do in the transfer portal. So they've got a lot to play for, and I expect they're going to play their A game the rest of the way.
So my three teams, Michigan, Houston, and Purdue.
Okay, I'll throw this question to you first. This is the last question. We're going to wrap up the show.
I got to give you my number one seed.
But what I want to know is what two teams you guys are putting into the championship game. Don't tell me the winner, because we're going to do that next week on our Final Four show. Which two teams do you have playing for the national championship? You more or less showed your hand there, Jim, when you mentioned those three teams. Which of the two teams do you have playing for the title?
Well, I'm not sure what brackets there is. I'm not sure. I could pick the wrong ones. I would say it's Michigan against Houston. If that doesn't match, it would be
that matches.
That matches, yeah.
Okay, good.
That's a nice twosome. Andy, your top two teams playing for the marbles.
Okay, well, I didn't give you my thoughts on will a number 1 seed win the
Oh,
tournament.
I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, and the reason I bring that up is you take a look at the quality of the number 2 seeds, all of which who are still alive, and St. John's, which I thought should have been higher than a 5 seed. You got UConn in the Duke region as a 2. You've got Houston as the leading seed with Florida out in that region. You've got Purdue, a 2 seed against Arizona, which may be the biggest of the differences between a 1 and a 2 in the various regions. The Duke, UConn, no Florida, and then the difference between Michigan and Iowa State, a team that nobody's really been talking about, and they've been excellent all year. I'm going to say that a number 1 seed will not win the tournament because I could see Iowa State. Now, I'm going to give you the 2 teams that I show in. I've got St. John's, and which is a 5 seed, against Michigan, which is a 1 seed, because that's what I suggested 2 weeks ago when we were looking before the selection Sunday. But I would not be shocked if Iowa State beats Michigan. I might be surprised but not shocked if Purdue beat Arizona. And I would certainly not be surprised if St. John's, Michigan State, or UConn beat Duke.
So, Andy, repeat the question. Which 2 teams do you have in the title
St. John's
game?
and Michigan. St. John's and
St.
Michigan.
John's and Michigan. Greg, your 2 teams.
And I've got St. Joe's winning, so therefore my answer of no one number 1 seed, St. John's winning, therefore my answer of number 1 seed not winning the tournament would still hold true.
So when we get to who's going to win it next week, I'll ask you to repeat that answer then, okay?
Only if the teams are still alive.
Probably Andy predicted St. John's would be there about a month ago, so he's been really right.
Greg, who do you got playing for the marbles?
Well, I had Duke and Michigan, so I'm sticking with that. But if I wanted to add in a sleeper team to upset the side of Duke, it would be Michigan State.
Michigan State for the sleeper. Nice.
Yeah.
Tom Izzo. Nice. Well, I will say this. I do not have a number 1 seed winning the tournament because my 2 teams that I've got playing for the championship are a pair of 2 seeds, one being the Houston Cougars,
right,
and the other being the Purdue Boilermakers. I'm just playing momentum, and I'm playing a lot on Houston's defense, and I'm playing a lot on Houston losing last year and returning this year. Those teams play with tremendous – I'm sorry?
I was going to say, let me throw out to the 3 of you, because nobody's really talked about their chances, and I think these are 2 very, very good teams that are built nicely, Illinois and Iowa State.
Very nice teams. Very nice. And
see, the nice thing about what we're talking about now is we've got 16 teams that are really quality.
Yes, they are.
And that's exciting to me.
Yes.
So this is where I think the real passion comes. In the old days, you could talk about some 14, 15, 16 seeds, coming up with a game or 2. These guys are good. Anybody here could get hot. I mean, sometimes it comes down to a missed free throw or you make the 3 or I miss the 3, that kind of thing. These are
even though, Jim, one of these 16 teams was a first 4 team, would you still make that statement?
I'm sorry?
Even though one of these 16 teams was playing in the first 4 games round, play-in round of the tournament, that being Texas, would you think they're the weak link that's left in the tournament at this point?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are. And that's where I think I made a mistake when I first looked at this matchup with Purdue. I think that I made a big mistake there. I think Purdue is too good for them.
I've got you.
So I have Iowa as the weakest of the teams remaining. And again, largely because Texas played in an SEC conference that was very solid at the top half of that conference. I'm not quite sure I could say that the Big Ten, which I think had 18 teams, if I remember, 18 or 15. I don't know that the quality of the top 5 or 6 in the Big Ten, how that matches up to the top 5 or 6 in the SEC.
They got a 13-3 record straight up, the Big Ten, Big 18, whatever you want to call it.
So does anybody want to give any Sweet 16 picks before we close the show?
Anyone?
I know you guys, I know some of you might have some picks in packages that you can actually.
Yeah, well, I gave out Texas, and I'm really sorry that I did. I think I made a mistake. I think I'm going to go with it. Saying with what Andy said, I think I like St. John's to knock off Duke. I do not think Duke has looked that good. I think Patino, with all the things that I feel, and then what Mark pointed out with all the tremendous stats on Patino's record, I think St. John's is going to beat Duke. I think Duke's on its way out.
Michigan State and UConn.
Higher ceiling for UConn, better consistency with Michigan State. I don't know what the hell to do with that game because I think UConn could beat them if they focus, but they don't always focus. I think they're slightly better, but they are spastic. They
and Hurley's always good for a technical foul or two.
Yes, I don't know what the hell. Izzo's much more consistent, but UConn is much more dangerous. I don't know what the hell to do with that game.
So I've got Jim
I'll be on Michigan State if that line goes from 2 to 3. It's out 2 right now.
Well, yeah, you got to take the dog, of course. Of course you do.
Okay, Jim, I'm going to give you St. John's. Greg, who's your Sweet 16 pick here?
Oh, if I had to take just one game,
yes, one team to cash.
Michigan State.
Michigan State. Never can go wrong with Tom Izzo, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Andy, you're one team to cash.
I would normally go. Well, normally I like to go with the biggest underdog at this point, which would be Alabama getting 10.5 against Michigan. But that game has a lot of volatility, and the same thing for the Arkansas-Arizona game because you've got 2 high-powered offenses. It's just a question of can they keep up with the better defenses that they're going to face. So I'm going to go with. I've got to go with St. John's getting 7 points now from Duke.
That's 2 St. John's votes, 1 Michigan State, and I'm going to make it 3 St. John's votes.
Wow.
Wow. That's for all of us. We're all.
I'm going to close the show with this great stat here, guys. It's in the Sweet 16 tournament guide. You're not going to find this anywhere. This is what you want to go download right now at playbooksports.com. St. John's is our upset play in the Sweet 16 guide. And usually we closed our top plays out with what
if I recall, wasn't the upset play in the first round a team called High Point?
Yes, it was High Point. Yes, it was.
Excellent.
Straight up.
Thank you, Andy. So this week, the upset I have is St. John's, okay? And we close it out with the clincher, okay? The clincher in this game is the fact that teams that are playing in the Sweet 16 round who won their opening round game by 6 or fewer points in the Sweet 16 round game. There have been 6 of them. None of them have cashed a ticket. That would be against Duke, against St. John's in this game as well.
It's a good thing that didn't apply to the round of 32 because St. John's would have fit into that one because they only won by 2. But you're talking first round.
Yes.
And let's hope you guys have better luck with St. John's than all the experts had taking South Florida against Louisville.
That's why I thank you, Greg, for not being on St. John's.
There you go.
It would have been unanimous. We don't want that.
You got it.
Now,
I'll be rooting for him, but yes.
South Florida against Louisville was unbelievable. When I lost with, Santa Clara, terrible loss. I won with South Florida, unbelievable win. So it's crazy.
They say it all evens out, Jim. You know, the bad beats and the games that you won comfortably, they all even out, I guess, in the long run.
I hope so.
Just the bad beats seem to stick out a little bit more of a sore spot. All right, guys, a great show once again this week. Make sure you check back in next week, if you will, next Wednesday, same time, same channel here on the ProLine TV channel. When
are we going back to? Are we staying out Wednesdays now? Because we only moved to Wednesdays because of the Thursday.
We
conflict.
did, but if it fits everybody's schedule, I would prefer because it allows me a little more chance to get some stuff done. But we'll double check if it changes.
What do you say? Thursdays we're going to go back to?
Well, we were going to initially, but if everybody can make Wednesday next week, we'll keep it. If I find out you guys can't make it, we can move it. So
my preference would normally be for Thursday, but I can do Wednesday next week.
I'm ready for Wednesday.
Greg, is Wednesday good with you?
Wednesday's good.
We got a date. Wednesday it'll be, guys. Next Wednesday, 1:00 Eastern. Tune in live here for the Against the Spread podcast. This is Marc Lawrence for our co-host and our experts extraordinaire, Jim Feist from Vegas, Andy Iskoe from Vegas, and Greg DePalma our producer extraordinaire. Once again, this is Marc Lawrence reminding you to always to remember to bet with your head, not over it, and good luck as always.